Okay, we're back. The next committee is Community and Economic Development, chaired by Michael Lillquist.
Thank you very much, Gene. Joining me on the Community and Economic Development Committee are Council members Roxanne Murphy and Pinky Vargas. We have one item before us today. It's a follow-up discussion on possible paid sick and safe leave program for the City of Bellingham. This last Wednesday, the committee held a listening session here in City Council chambers. We heard from numerous people, comments from people both for and against the idea. I think I noted some very good, high-quality comments came from the community, and I personally noted significant areas of overlapping agreement in the middle, so to speak, on this. I've asked our policy analyst, Mr. Mark Gardner, to briefly just summarize some of those comments, and then we'll bring it back to the committee. Mr. Gardner?
Good afternoon, committee members. Just wanted to provide a general overview of the comments. This is a quick sampling of an hour and a half session, though, so if somebody would like to get all the details, it's now posted on the City Council web page under meetings and meeting materials. And so the video is there. So this is just my take. I think I've got probably a pretty good sense of the majority of the comments. Some, as Michael mentioned, some are repeated. But I'm just going to read through these to give you a flavor of the first of all a set of comments that related to either direct opposition or with concerns about this proposal, and then I'll go over some that provided either some general or specific support and just give you a sense of what was said at the public meeting. I'm just going to read these. The first opposition or concern comment was that the tracking and paperwork requirements of sick leave ordinance will add complications to business operations. Second, a sick leave program adds to business costs substantially if employees take all available leave. And they also noted that Washington State already has a high minimum wage. Business mandates reinforce a perception of Bellingham as not business friendly, and some businesses may leave Bellingham if this passes. Running a restaurant is very challenging. This will make it harder. Many employers provide sick leave already because they value their employees and want to retain them, but this should not be a government-mandated requirement. And that was a common theme throughout the set of comments here. If specific business provides a long-term benefit for illness, this was a particular business owner mentioned this, but there's no credit for that long-term benefit under a proposed sick leave program. One person supports a sick leave requirement but believes it should be done at the state or national level. If enacted by the city, this creates a competitive disadvantage. And a similar comment was businesses need to keep costs down to compete with businesses in other states and other nations. And other people noted that small business will be impacted as they operate with small margins, and that there shouldn't be a one-size-fit-all proposal. There was also some claims that people will abuse a policy and take leave when it's not warranted. So that was a concern. There was also some specifics regarding a draft ordinance that was in the packet a number of weeks ago. Somebody noted that it was unclear on many details, and some of the requirements, for example, for part-timers or people with varying schedules was unclear, and so as a business owner they didn't understand how to implement it. And there was a general call for make sure that any requirements that are proposed are understandable to the business owners. And lastly, there was a call to not include a cash payout requirement in such an ordinance. Some sick leave policies have the ability to cash out sick leave after they accumulate. So those are just a representative sample. Some of these are repeats. I'm sure I missed some, but as I mentioned, it's all posted. It was a pretty good hearing with very clear statements on both sides, and so people certainly could get the additional details there. And just to go over some of the comments that were in general supporting the proposal or the general idea. I'm going to start with the first one. This is a matter of economic justice affecting about half of employees in Bellingham who do not have paid sick leave. Many sick employees would like to stay home when they are sick, but they cannot afford to. Some discussion about conflict with paying rent and being able to take off when they're sick. There was some comments about this being a public health issue. Some of the people who go to work sick are in industries such as food service and healthcare, where the public is directly affected. Somebody noted that children are missing school to take care of younger sick siblings because parents cannot miss work. Another comment, time off for safe leave in domestic violence situations is necessary so that people can make arrangements to ensure their safety. National employers were not at the meeting. Somebody noted that Walmart's and Macy's are not providing leave and are a big part of the problem. Such companies will not provide sick leave unless forced. Some current or former business owners stated their support for paid leave and believe that this is just a cost of doing business. Another set of comments was regarding employee retention and morale, which they claim goes up when sick leave is available, paid sick leave. And also, there was a note that sick employees make other employees sick. Studies show that costs of sick leave programs are less than expected because employees do not take all available days that are provided. Someone noted that not all City of Bellingham employees have paid sick leave. Other communities in Washington are leading, and Bellingham needs to join them. And lastly, there was a general call to work with stakeholders to create an ordinance with broad support. So those are just a sampling of the issues that were brought up. And as I mentioned, there's some additional details in the public record, but I just wanted to provide an overview.
Thank you, Mark. That was a good summary, I believe, and in addition, so the public knows that there's also a two-page fact sheet that Mark developed, which indicates some of the lay of the land and how these laws are implemented and issues if you implement one of these laws. With that, I'll bring it back to the committee. Pinky?
Thank you, Mark. That was a very engaging discussion we had last Wednesday. And this is a very important issue for us to be discussing. Everyone does deserve to take a sick leave when they need it. I've had more citizen engagement on this issue in the last 2 years than I've had on anything else. I've met with a lot of people on both sides and looked at all the implications. And I do support this kind of policy. And I want to ensure that what we are enacting or supporting will achieve the results that are desired and not have unintended consequences. This has been my most challenging issue so far, weighing on what all the impacts are going to be. And in examining this process and reviewing the implementation process, I believe this is a bigger issue than just Bellingham can take on and should be administered at the state level. Bellingham implementing this ordinance in isolation will cause other unintended consequences and create more disparity, probably between people who work in the City of Bellingham and the people who work in the county. Therefore, I move that we draft a resolution in working in collaboration with the city staff to ask the governor and all state legislatures to urge them to move forward on state regulation to pass sick and safe leave. And I want us, the City of Bellingham, to take an active role in engaging our county, all of our other cities and neighborhoods in advocating for legislation at the state and national level. There was a bill in front of the state last year that did not get through the Senate, and I want us to be active participants and cheerleaders to ensure that this gets the voice it needs at the state level. And if we can all bond together, we can make that happen and create a fair and equal playing field for everyone in this state. And hopefully it'll get to a national level as well. But I move that we draft a resolution that is in support of state legislation.
Okay, so we have a motion to draft a resolution supporting state-level paid sick and safe leave and to take an active advocacy role for that in Olympia. Discussion. Roxanne.
Well, I support this level of outreach, absolutely, but I do not want this to put an end to the initiative here in Bellingham, and I would love to keep the community dialogue going because we just got to the point where people are comfortable enough to speak to us about this. And I want to learn more about what the community's interests are, because we're still receiving community input about this. So I don't want this to immediately put an end to this, especially because we haven't really done any notice to the community that we'd be taking a definitive step to end it. I think people should have a chance to say how they feel about it and what they want to see out of it, if they want it to end and if they want it to go forward. We had such a 50-50 split, it felt like, at our listening session, and I'd like to get more feedback on that, to hear what people want at the local level, and to see if potentially we could come up with something that's a little more middle ground, that more people might get behind, so it wouldn't be such a 50-50 split. So I'm not willing to throw in the towel yet, and I hope others might join me in that.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a definite important, necessary step to take. I think that's the best way for it to be implemented. I think that if we speak to the legislature, we can actually maybe include or encourage a better outcome for what that form that legislation takes. So I'd be in favor of drafting a resolution. Are there any other council members who would like to speak on this motion before the committee takes a vote? Gene.
Yeah, I agree with Pinky. I think this, it's ridiculous that it's not nationwide. It really is, and that's where it lays in, folks. And our job up here, one of our most important jobs, is taking care of our own employees. We are the final say when it comes to benefit packages, pay raises. We are the people that take care of our employees, and I've heard a lot from some of our employees who want to know why we've spent time on this in this kind of a way. And I understand some frustration that happened there. But in the long run, I think this is a good discussion. It was a good discussion. I watched the meeting on television. I think it was handled very well. You had a very explosive issue in front of two entities, and it was really a good meeting. So I don't think the dialogue never has to stop. I mean, that's something that's going to go along. But this needs to be taken care of by our Congress and by our legislature. It really does, and that's where it lies. And I think supporting a resolution and actively working in its favor, and hopefully in a few election cycles or maybe another election cycle, we'll get some people that believe the same way in the state of Washington and get it done. So I think this has been a good discussion.
Thank you, Gene. Any other committee members or council members?
No,
Terry?
I definitely agree with the idea of encouraging their state legislators to pass this, because I think definition and having a level playing field for all businesses around the areas and stuff is an important thing. But I also agree with Roxanne in that I would not be opposed to further discussion. I'm not saying I'm supporting anything with it, because there's nothing to support at this point. There's no a resolution to support other than just a concept in general. I think the idea of further discussion on what something might look like or how it could impact it is a good thing. And so, but I can definitely support this without any problem. And yeah.
Any other council members? Jack?
So I don't know if you'd be interested in adding onto the resolution motion, but to me it seems like by passing this resolution, I agree with what has been said over here, that this may end up just ending the discussion on this if we just simply punt it to the state. And to me it seems like we could do two different things. One is to add on to the motion to say that if the state legislature did not do anything associated with this, that the city of Bellingham would then join Seattle and Tacoma as other cities. I mean, this is the way a lot of legislation ends up getting passed in the state, is that cities take the risk. They go out and they do what they do, and ultimately it becomes a statewide issue. And when states do it, then ultimately it becomes a national issue. But I'm wondering whether or not we say, we give the legislature a certain number of cycles to go and do this, and then it would come back to the city council to explore doing it on our own. And the other thing is that as far as framing what the city of Bellingham's role is, and are lobbying to the state legislature, maybe it would be good to go and set up a stakeholder group of people in the community to determine what is the city's legislative priorities associated with this, and that we can come up with whatever the model is that would be appropriate for our own local. I mean, we got six legislators in our area, in our city, to at least let them know, and if not, other ones too. So I don't know, I offer that up.
Dan?
Yeah, I would support this when it comes to the full council tonight, only if we are active in leadership when it comes to making this a priority at the state level. Just kind of, I guess, refining Councilmember Weiss's comments. Some things things happened recently that during this process kind of came percolated to the top, and part of that was that businesses largely supported this being a state level piece of legislation. So I think this is an opportunity to reach out to those business owners to say, look, can you please sign on to a document that says that you support this? Those words were said in this chamber last Wednesday. They're sent to us via email that this should be a state priority. And so I'd like to engage those stakeholders to back that type of leadership activity, and that there's another opportunity with the Association of Washington Cities to create this as a legislative priority. It currently isn't right now, but it could be. And I know that's a slower process, but I feel like one of the organizers said that of the pro side said that he is not morally superior to a person that works in a fast food restaurant because the organizer had paid and protected sick leave, yet the fast food worker didn't. And I feel like Bellingham citizens are not morally superior to citizens of Ferndale or of unincorporated Whatcom County or Anacortes or anywhere else in the state of Washington. I feel like this is a state-level piece of legislation, and that Washington should be a leader along with the 4 other states now that currently have this. And I would only support any motion that comes forward tonight if we are indeed acting as leaders. I don't want to punt on this one. The discussion's not over. It's far from it.
Pinky, then we'll go to Roxanne.
I just want to address also what Jack said, is that I don't feel this is a punt. I feel like this is us taking leadership, and this is us encouraging others to show our desire to have this passed at a state level so that everyone is under the same rules. So, and I will be on a special committee, whatever it takes. I can go lobby in Olympia. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show leadership and encouragement of this on a state level.
Roxanne?
Maybe I need to drink some optimistic tea, but I have absolutely no faith that the legislature will take action on this. And I'm hearing all my council members, and I respect where you're coming from so much on this, but I just think it's really sad because we could be leaders in our community. And to me, the thing that I'm concerned about is that every single flu season that's going to go by, another year that we wait to do something like this, is another thing that's going to impact the 85,000 people that we are supposed to work to protect the public health of. So again, I respect the council member's conviction, but I wish we could do more to protect our workers here and also to protect our citizens that we were elected to help.
Mayor Kelly? Well, I just want to make one point of process then you, Kelly. So the point of process is right now we're approving the idea of a resolution. Tonight there will be no resolution to pass because it hasn't been written yet.
Given direction.
And this is a vote to take a positive step with regard to advocating Olympia. It's not a vote to not do anything locally. So I just want to make the motion is more narrow than that. It doesn't preclude other things. Mayor Kelly.
Well, first of all, I think that is a good step to make sure that we have a united front for our legislators. Also, to bring it up at AWSC for there to be a municipal response if, in fact, people want to have that as part of the legislative agenda. I also think that a couple people made some comments that I think are absolutely true. This is an important policy, so we want to make sure that if you want to continue discussing it, that we give you the best information possible First of all, Jean mentioned, not all of our city employees have this, and I think the council should understand that, that aspect of it and what that means, just for your information, not as a rallying cry one way or the other. And the other thing is, Tacoma and Seattle did pass these ordinances. They're quite different. So I think that it would be good for the council to be able to hear what other communities have done, rather than assume there's a one size fits all, one way to do it, so that you have some of that information too if you decide to proceed and do something at the local community level, so you understand your options, which is something that I think the administration is required to propose or to make available to you.
Thank you. So there are several moving parts here. First, I'd like us to simply vote on the resolution. Then I want to circle back to what Mayor Kelly said ever so briefly with regard to our city finance directors looked at maybe some impacts on the city. And then finally, if we do go forward, Mark, for example, has not been prepared to do a deep analysis into this. He's done a cursory analysis, and I think we should revisit that issue maybe when the resolution comes forward, not today, because we're a little bit over schedule right now. So first of all, let's take the vote. Is there any more further discussion on the motion to draft a resolution supporting state-level paid sick and safe leave and to actively advocate for that in Olympia? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bring that forward with a unanimous recommendation. Actually, do we need a unanimous recommendation tonight, or can committee just do that?
No, you're going to bring it forward tonight.
Okay, so tonight we'll bring it forward with a unanimous recommendation. And I do want to wrap this up, but I did ask Mr. Henshaw, apparently you did some looking into what the possible impacts for a paid sick and safe leave might be, or maybe Mark, you handle this, for the city of Bellingham, both for compliance ourselves and or for administering this. Are either of you prepared to offer any comments at this point?
I haven't looked into that, so I'm not at all prepared to provide any comments.
Hi, boy, Mark.
And if you haven't looked into it yet in much detail, that's fine too.
And I think that I'd preface Brian's remarks with, we were waiting to see what council was
Right.
going to do, so.
Yeah, I think that's Brian Henshaw, Finance Department. So when this first came up back in July, staff very quickly looked at it, and basically so that we could have at least some responses to whatever came forward. But since that time, it's been council's public hearings and comment sessions, and so we haven't done anything since July. And I think it'd be best if that's what you want to do, then we need to take it to the next level and do some due diligence on it. I spoke briefly with Seattle twice. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned about where it's been implemented, how it was implemented. They have lots of ideas on how to make it better and the impact. So if council decides to move forward at the local level, then we need to work with administration and staff to prepare that in-depthly. But there's just a lot of information and differing statistics out there. I think even today there's, how many people are impacted. That's when I would start with, because I've heard at least two different numbers just since Wednesday and today. So I think that it would be worth doing, but we need direction to do that, and we need a plan to do that. And it's kind of also very wide open right now. I mean, there was a draft ordinance drafted, but I don't know what's happened since
We
July.
didn't draft that ordinance.
Yeah.
But that was presented, is all I'm saying. And so, we can do research, but until we know what we're researching, it's just an open-ended question right now that has a lot of moving parts to it, as you said.
Okay, thank you. So I do want to wrap this up. We're almost out of time. I want to go on to whatever next steps would be. Roxanne?
I just want to say really quick, it'll also be really interesting to see the states that have passed this. There are cities of similar size, and how this affects the cities of similar size or smaller will be interesting for us to learn about.
Another good question. So we're going to bring forward at some, hopefully, maybe the next meeting, I don't know, a draft resolution on this issue. Is there any other steps we want to schedule now for the committee, or should we bring that up at the next work session that we have? Anyone prepared to request next steps, or just end of committee for today?
That's enough.
Okay, so that's the end of today's
Michael?
discussion.
Just
I'm sorry.
Before you finish that last word, I'm just going to ask if you'd like me to write the resolution. I could do it relatively quickly. I could do the quick and dirty one by next meeting, which because of the holiday, but I'd prefer to have one additional meeting so I could bring it the first meeting of December. I'll run it past Brian and legal department and make sure we've got general review of it, but if you would like, I could bring it the first meeting in December.
Does the committee have a preference?
As long as, that's fine. I'm not on the committee, but that's okay.
I would appreciate if Mark would be willing to take a first stab at that and
That you should
obviously working with
Meet as a
legal on the
committee,
Okay.
decide
implications.
what,
Yeah.
you should
So
draft, what draft what.
Committee members, it's
Should have a
fine if we would
discussion
take an
about what
extra
you
week or
wanna
two to,
draft is all.
for to draft this. We don't need it next meeting for the resolution. There's no, okay. Yeah, it'd be fine if it takes, it takes a little longer to bring forward a version. I'd love to see a draft of that, by the way, before it goes too far. Okay, I think that's the end of the business for the Community and Economic Development Committee.